watershed protection ordinance. So just, I guess a general overview is that this watershed protection ordinance applies to the eastern area of Belmont within a half-mile and 1 mile radius of our water intake for the water supply. So we want to protect that watershed from high-dense development, and if a developer wants to do a high-density project, then they have to apply for and receive a high-density permit. So previously, we had proposed that the Watershed Review Board, which is also made up of City Council, be removed, and the Watershed Administrator would see and approve any high-density permits, which we've now, you guys gave us feedback and said that you will also still see those high-density permits, which I'll present and make a recommendation based on site plans, proposed stormwater control measures and calculations, and we'll issue those permits with your suggestions there. And then the Board of Adjustment, we were proposing that they review and approve variances and appeals, and so that's kind of just that will remain as their function. So if there's any applications or denial of applications by the Watershed Review Board, that could then go to the Board of Adjustments. And then we talked a lot about buffers, which is also known as vegetated setbacks. That kind of plays into also the changes we made to our stormwater ordinance. But previously, the Watershed Protection Ordinance placed 50-foot buffers on the Catawba for low-density development, and since we've adopted 100-foot riparian buffers along all areas of the Catawba Main Stem and South Fork as part of our stormwater ordinance, we would also like to make that change here. So there'll be a required 100-foot buffer of any type of development along those borders. So that's mainly it. There were some minor edits that I received today, and those have been addressed, and so I'm recommending that we approve this ordinance if no one else has any thoughts or comments at this point.
I'm not going to hold it up, but I would like us to continue to look down the autonomous monitoring system, particularly what Neil Brennan was bringing up. I mentioned that as just a point of clarification. If there's interest from the rest of council, I don't know if this falls into watershed or more into stormwater, or its own type of encompassing code within planning and zoning. I'd like to see if there's a consensus with council to maybe direct staff to look into adding this in there. We've done this, talked about this for a couple of years. I think Neil brings up some great points. He also emailed council some great points and additional details and data. I think it's time we just get it into writing.
I agree. To his point, if it's a conditional approval, we can also, we'd also have the option to waive it for certain requests if it was warranted. So I don't see any harm. I see a lot of benefit to it. Would that be added to the land development?
So that would go back into the stormwater ordinance, which was previously approved back in March. So that we added a section, and we did add some additional measures. We added the double row or super silt fence along borders of the Catawba or South Fork, the beefed up sediment basins, the additional buffers and whatnot. So we did add a new section in our stormwater ordinance part of the land development standards manual. So if we want to add the monitors, that would be the place where it would go. I think, just the part that's a little gray area, unclear to me, is that how we will enforce those violations. Like I said before, Gaston County reviews all the erosion control plans, issues permits, and then they go do the inspections. So if there is a violation for sedimentation, they're the ones issuing the notice of violation and potential civil penalties. So I think for me, I have a full plate of engineering, and erosion control is kind of a separate thing. And turbidity is even more kind of a niche for environmental engineering. But we may want to look at hiring erosion control inspector or someone that can go out in the field and then follow up with these alerts that we're getting, and that could possibly administer a notice of violation and stop work orders.
I think sorry, go ahead, Miles.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think maybe appropriate action is to come up back with some type of recommendation in regards to a proposal. Maybe it's one, maybe it's two, maybe it's three different types of variations of the proposal. But just to get the ball moving on this one, I mean, the way I look at it, the waterways, both the South Fork River and the Catawba River, is one of our greatest assets that we have for our community and what has continued to help us to kind of revitalize the city itself in some instances. I mean, I think, definitely we need to kind of look to protecting that, particularly thinking about Pittenger 2 and 3, which border a critical river, the South Fork River. So I think we're at the point where we just try to see proposal to this.
That's what I was gonna say. I think it's a good idea to let us kind of digest what that turbidity monitoring looks like and kind of break it down to see if we can do it in-house, if we can't do it in-house, what's the cost to us? Because right now, that's not budget, that's draft budget's laying on your desk is a monitoring system, employees, a consultant engineer. Can we even monitor it ourselves? If Gaston County does not do it, we're really not set up like that. So I think it would be good if we just broke all the components down, brought it back to you all, that way you can see how complicated something like that may be for us. And then we get the direction from you all to still do it, then you'll have, here's what it's gonna take for us to do that.
The only thing I would add is I think we need to explore the opportunity of the developer paying and footing the bill. I mean, you take a large development like the Del Webb and how many houses they have and then divide that by whatever the cost of this would be, it's gonna be immaterial for an overall development. So I don't think this is something that the existing taxpayers should have to pay, but necessarily new and future developments coming down the pipeline to protect our waterways. So maybe we include that into the equation.
Because these monitors will really only be needed during the construction phase, not as an ongoing monitoring system necessarily.
Correct. It's usually, the dirt moving activity happens early on.
Yeah.
Sometimes developments get issued early grading permits, like Delma, for example, they move dirt, with just the erosion control plans. They may not have had full plan approval at that point. So we're still reviewing development plans when they're out there moving dirt, setting up, sediment basins. So that's kind of where some overlap and some work with Gaston County needs to happen. So if there was a violation, we need to be able to issue a violation so that they can stop and correct the measures. So that's, maybe just need some guidance and recommendations on how I'm gonna enforce it.
Anything else? I think Kate might have mentioned it, but I had I had some edits to the edits, but there are just a couple of substantive items with regards to appeals to the Board of Adjustment. Since, as was in our packet, it referred to an appeal from a decision of the Watershed Administrator going to the Board of Adjustment, which is fine, but because we said we are now in City Council, the Watershed Review Board, I wanted to make sure that it was clear that there were also mechanisms to appeal the decision of the Watershed Review Board, which I think in section 153.27I says that watershed protection permit can be appealed pursuant to 153.37. So I made some edits, I think, to two provisions to indicate that an appeal from a decision of the Watershed Administrator or the decision of the Watershed Review Board on a high-density development permit application will go to the Board of Adjustment. Just to be clear that it was clear that you could appeal from the Watershed Administrator to the Board of Adjustment. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear how you appeal from the Watershed Review Board on a high-density development permit application as well, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense. Thanks, Jim.
Mm-hmm. So there being nothing else, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve is with Jim's modifications.
Motion made by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. The amendments to the Watershed Protection Ordinance pass.
And thank you so much
Yes.
for your work
Thank
on
you.
this. Yeah. I know it's been a lot.
Yes, I'm sure you'll be happy that you don't have to come and talk about this with us next month. All right. Very good. Moving on, item C4, fluoride in drinking water. And I will turn it over to our Public Works Director, Jonathan Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. I believe we're going to get the presentation pulled up here. most of which is the same that you previously heard at the last meeting. Okay, so, as has been stated tonight, by several of the public comments, fluoride is a naturally occurring mineral. It's found in water, soil, certain foods. There's topical, systemic, and compounded fluoride. It began being added to the public water supply in as early as 1945. So the type of fluoride that the city of Belmont uses is HFS. It's produced by converting phosphoric rock into soluble fertilizer. Process releases two toxic fluoride gases, hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride. The hydrogen fluoride condensation is collected, scrubbed with water to create the HFS, which is then added. We purchase in bulk, added to the water as the water is treated. So it is known that HFS is less reactive and toxic than some other types of fluoride, but it is still a hazardous substance. Therefore, our operators at the water treatment plant have to take special precautions when working around the fluoride. Thank you. So here is just an overhead shot of the water treatment plant facility. The next slide zooms in a little bit more on the bulk storage tanks, which are there next to the holding tanks for the water treatment plant. And here's a side view of those pictures. The one on the far right is the fluoride storage tank. And some of the corrosiveness shown here to the facility from the fluoride. You can see there in the pictures some of the damage that it does do to some of the infrastructure at the plant.
Is that eating away at the concrete?
It is, yes. And then here are two pictures of pumps. These are replaced every couple of years. It is an added cost to the treatment process. And then the budget implications for the fluoride. Yearly, we spend approximately $9,000 to $10,000 on the fluoride chemical itself. The reagents and supplies for testing is approximately $5,200 a year. The transfer pumps, approximately $3,800 a year, or every 2 to 3 years when they are replaced. And the pump typically lasts 2 to 3 years for this chemical. Sorry, it's kind of cut off there, but we did add two pictures of the treatment basins showing the water treatment. So on to the public budget implications. We do need additional storage for alum. That is a chemical that is used at the treatment plant for the treatment of the water. It aids in settling the water and taking the turbidity out of the water. Due to the limited space at the treatment plant, it would be difficult and costly to add an additional bulk storage containment area. This item has been on the water and sewer, water treatment plant enterprise fund CIP for several years. It was originally budgeted at $180,000. That would have given the city enough room for 2 bulk storage tanks. Right now, we only are in need of 1, so we anticipate that cost being approximately $100,000 to add the containment area. If we were to discontinue fluoride in the treatment process, we would not need to construct the additional storage tank area, containment area. Also purchase the additional bulk storage containment, which would save that funding. We would look at converting or replacing the current fluoride storage tank with a new tank for alum, and that would be a cost of approximately $20,000. And then just some other examples of communities that fluoride to their water. And then this is the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality Public Water Supply Section code. It talks about the discontinuing of fluoride in the treatment process. I'll be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Questions for John?
Is alum, is it as corrosive as fluoride?
I would defer to our water treatment plant manager to answer that question. Jennifer, yes.
Okay. Meaning, like, are we replacing pumps every 2 to 3 years for the alum?
Not like, the pH of fluoride, the fluoride acid is a lot lower. I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head what it is, but the pH of fluoride is much lower than the alum. Alum is an acid, like it's below a 7, but it's not like the fluoride. And the picture, I wanted to point out, it is a little bit cut off. So the picture on the left, this is water from the river when we've had a lot of rain and turbidity. I mean, it looks like chocolate milk. Fluoride does nothing to treat that. Alum is what causes all of that dirt in there to clump together, so that we can produce clean drinking water. And if we were to have a long period of high turbidity like that, we would only have about 2.5 weeks of storage of alum at the water plant site. And actually, according to North Carolina State, you should have 30 days worth of treatment chemicals on site. If we were to add another 6,000, that would give us 35 days worth. And I can find that later and cite in the rule book where that 30-day supply is listed if you would like me to do that.
We've got to have more alum storage.
So we're currently out of compliance for the amount of
I think it's
needed.
pretty much grandfathered in, like we have a state inspection every year. The state inspector, there's never been any deficiencies. We use more chemical than most water treatment plants. You can't compare us to Mount Holly or Gastonia because they pull from Mountain Island. Every day they have a consistent, or even all through the year, consistent turbidity, maybe 2 or 3. That picture you see there is probably 200 turbidity. And the alum allows us to treat that to get that down to a 0.02 turbidity that we're sending out to people.
And those kinds of numbers would be after, say, a major storm event typically, or is that kind of consistently that high?
No,
Before the
it's-
alum treatment?
It's after a major storm event, and Helene, I think scared a lot of people, I know, but, had our chemical companies, of course, we had a lot of turbidity, been affected and not been able to get to us, and we have run out of alum, we would not have been able to make drinkable water.
I remember that statement in your summary, that struck me as something that's very concerning.
Additional questions?
Yeah, I do. I mean, just a couple things here, because, this came to us a little while back, just for those who are here and who are watching, staff did try to do that, but obviously, as we have all found, this topic tends to be a little bit one way or the other, and people tend to see it, whereas our intention as a city was more going into this as more of a cost savings, cost perspective, and not necessarily taking in kind of this full kind of holistic view that we see today and talking about. But with that being said, just to kind of talk a little bit about fluoride itself, I mean, it is diluted quite a bit by the time it gets to the consumer, correct? Can we talk a little bit about the scaling system that the state of North Carolina requires municipalities to abide by and where we fall at on that scale?
You mean as far as the
Fluoride in the actual finished product of the
Okay.
water.
So the state, I have reports, we send off samples twice a month to the state. And also check it ourselves, but I.
You're speaking specifically to the fluoride levels twice a
Right.
day. Okay.
Right. But I sent the, levels from the state to Jonathan, and on average, it's about a 0.75 that we feed.
That's what I've heard is the standard, it's 0.7 parts per million, I guess, and
And what is the range for the requirement in the state of North Carolina, the minimum and the maximum? I guess maybe there's not necessarily a minimum, but what would the max?
Well,
be?
there's, definitely MCLs that you wouldn't wanna go over that would be dangerous.
Mhm.
Can't remember that right off the top of my head. It could be, it might be a 2.0.
I think that happened in a neighboring municipality within the last several years, and they found that their accounts were like 1.3, and it was causing some spotting, and some of the residents too much for fluoride.
But the range set by the state is 0.6 milligrams per liter to 1.0 milligrams per liter, and we're at 0.75 milligrams per
Can you
liter.
say that with range one more time, Miles?
Yeah, 0.6 milligrams per liter to 1.0 milligrams per liter, and we are averaging 0.75 milligrams per liter.
And generally, when do we test that? It's still at the plant. The water hasn't been distributed to the consumer by the time that we're testing this, right?
No, well, we test it daily.
Mhm.
So we collect samples, because we have several tests that we run every day. So we collect samples sometime after midnight and run them that day. But you would, unless there was a huge like failure of the pump and nobody knew it or something like that, I've never seen it get too high. Like usually you'll see it inching up, and you need to back off of it a little bit. But really, our operators don't have much to do with controlling the dose because of how strong the chemical is. So that's usually something that the senior plant operator would do. Like if the lab technician noticed, hey, this is getting a little high, or this is starting to trend downward, then he would make that adjustment.
Gotcha.
What happens in that scenario? You mentioned that there was a pump failure. Are there backup plans in place or backup pumps that would then?
Well, if too much got into the water, because it's a what we call a post chemical, so it is one of the last things added before the water goes to the storage on site. We would have to somehow waste all that water, and probably be out of commission for a little bit while we're getting rid of that, because we have something on site called a clarifier where you have to send the water that you want to waste. And I'm not even sure if it was a really high dose of fluoride, we might have to do something to it before we could send it to the waste plant, because you don't want to mess up their processes.
Yeah, but we do have emergency protocols for situations such as if we have too much in a water supply, where at the plant, we would recognize that, turn valves, put notices out to the public, plus we're interconnected to other municipal water
Mount
sources.
Holly and Two Rivers.
Correct, so, it's not like we can help each other out. Mount Holly had an issue, Two Rivers had an issue, you can go both ways, just in case, but yeah, there are emergency protocols if you have too much in there.
And then, when we had talked last, was it DEQ recommends you the fluoride into the water systems, right, through the state of North Carolina? Or did they give a stance in regards to our question?
That's only one person's opinion.
Higher inspector.
So we get into this kind of the opinion thing that I had mentioned, where it's like some say yes, some say no.
The DEQ provides a statement that if you want to remove fluoride from your water system, here's the process. And that's how they go through it. They share that with you, and that's in your packet as well.
And if it were a chemical that treated the water, that statement would not exist.
Because it'd be a requirement
Right.
as opposed to optional.
Are there any other chemicals in your process that are added to the supply that are not intended to treat the water other than fluoride?
That's the only one.
Do we know when fluoride was added to our water system?
1971.
1971.
Additional questions? So it's, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Jim. I have a couple more, but I'm just kind of collecting my thoughts unless you're just trying to wrap it up on this.
I'm not, it's staff's recommendation to remove it
Yes.
based on purely the budgetary concerns.
Yes, we feel that we need more treatment chemical on hand. Since this is not a water treatment chemical, we would recommend removing it from the water supply.
Now, we said that this is a natural occurring, basically element, correct, that we're adding to the water. So would it be safe to say, and again, this is where it gets tricky, because obviously I know you guys specialize in your existing kind of functions, but from any type of the research we found, is this not existing in water tables where wells would be currently drilled through existingly?
It can even be in spring water,
Can be.
usually in lower levels.
Right, because the reason why I bring that up is one of the counter arguments was that, well, if you live in the county, you weren't exposed to it, but that may not necessarily be correct. You could have had a dosage of fluoride of some, I don't know what those range would be, based off of your well, because this is a natural occurring element that is in the existing water tables. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there in perspective, that it could potentially be in the well systems as well, and that's not something you can take out. The only way to take this out is with a certain special filtration that is not in a refrigerator and or regular faucet or spigot at the house, right?
That is my understanding, yes.
It's naturally occurring in the water, why would we need to add it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Is that a rhetorical question?
Okay.
I
Just
don't
checking.
know. I would have an answer to that.
Okay.
But it's a good point. Look, from my perspective, I know I'm the one kind of talking a lot on this one. I struggle with this one, and I think a lot of you struggle with this one. I did a lot of my own internal research. You know, you look at it from where kind of the dental associations and most dentists that have come out and sent me emails and sent you all emails kind of fall on this. And, you know, I thought David raised a great point, right? You know, he should be advocating we remove it, right? Because then you're going to have a higher patient. So, you know, I don't know, for me, I find it very tough because, you know, from what I have found, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist out there, but from what I have found, I haven't seen anything material from some of these big clinics, from these big health organizations that would specifically say that this is harmful and should be removed from all water systems and sources. It can vary. Maybe I'm reading different articles than you are.
I haven't seen anything that says it's harmful
Right.
necessarily. At least, I mean, there are some out there, but none that I've seen that have been substantiated. The biggest thing I think is folks arguing about what the marginal benefit of having it in the water supply versus the cost of it, both to infrastructure, personal health, and things like that. I had a few thoughts, if I may, maybe take just a minute to get through this, but I just wanted to share this. Because I know we've all spent considerable time investigating both sides of this, and we've heard from a good many residents, medical and dental professionals, and others that have very valid points on both sides. And that we're all very grateful to have that kind of insight to help us make more of an informed decision. But for most, I think this debate really boils down to the question of whether continuing to add fluoride to our water supply provides, again, that meaningful preventative measure for tooth decay versus the potential negative implications on our personal health, medical freedoms, and the substantial corrosive cost to our infrastructure. One of the things, again, that kind of struck me when I was reading your summary, and I saw this in another source as well, is, you know, we can't, I don't think, emphasize the fact that fluoride is the only additive to our water that's not meant to treat the water. It's for the consumers, it's for us. And so I'm not sure that it's the municipality's right, even though it's been done for decades. It's essentially forced and involuntary consumption of what the FDA considers a medicine at the end of the day. But on the other hand, I know that there's a lot of, there's a large percentage of dental professionals who are very big proponents of fluoridation for its purported cavity prevention efficacy, but I've also seen numerous recent studies, to your point, that are also supported by a large number of dental and medical professionals that dispute these claims. One is a 2018 study that was funded by the National Institutes of Health, found no significant correlation between ingested fluoride and cavity reduction. The International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology has studied the nature and effects of fluoride for decades and found no discernible health benefits from adding fluoride. Western Europe, over 97% of the population drinks non-fluoridated water, yet their tooth decay rates are generally lower than the tooth decay rates in the U.S. The CDC admits there is already a consensus that fluoride's effectiveness in preventing cavities is primarily topical, not swallowed in water. You know, that's what we get when we go to the dentist. You're not getting that, you're ingesting this, and so I imagine that there's some different thoughts there in terms of the efficacy of swallowing or ingesting the fluoride versus having a topical application. And then lastly, the World Health Organization's data through 2023 showed no statistically different decline in tooth decay for children in developed countries that fluoridate water versus the majority that do not fluoridate water. So I think, at the end of the day, are the somewhat disputed and marginal benefits of fluoride worth the cost, both the financial cost and the potential personal health cost? I think that's really kind of what it comes down to for a lot of us. It's a tough one. But that was.
We would be the first in Gaston County as a municipality to do this, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you, Jason. Any other questions or thoughts? Seeing none, does anyone like to make a motion?
I'm really conflicted, as we all are.
Yes.
I see it both ways, so it's really hard, and I did do my research as well, and working at a dentist's office in the past, I mean, I understand the benefits that come with this, and I also understand the pediatric side of things, like when John and I were on the well, we had to add fluoride to our bottles for our children. As the dentist said that they did ingest it, so I'm hearing what you said with current research, so I'm just really conflicted, because I was really leaning one way, and now I'm not really sure what to think. This is not.
No recommendation to remove the fluoride.
Based off a financial decision.
Yeah, I don't care about the financial part, like, we're doing this for the people, and I wanna make sure we're doing right by the people, so, at the end of the day, if it's serving no benefit, then why continue to do it? If it's serving a benefit, then why stop doing something that's been working, right? So, but it's just very
Therein
conflicting.
lies the question.
Right,
Yeah.
it's conflicting, yeah.
How long, so let's just say hypothetically speaking, that we move forward and then the fluoride tank is then converted to alum. How long until we're gonna need a new tank for additional alum? Do we know, did we run those numbers, or is it gonna be 10 years out, 5 years out, 20 years out or so before we need a new tank regardless? Because again, where I'm trying to get at it, the decision is solely based off of kind of, and again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because I understand why you're bringing it forward. I don't think anyone here intended that this were opening up the can of worms in regards to kind of trying to discuss and debate health professions and stuff like that. But
Not at all.
how long do we think we're gonna go if we need a brand new alum tank regardless? You know what I mean? Do we know that?
You mean, like, how long will it last,
It's-
or when do we
When
plan
will
to
we
replace
eventually
it?
need a new tank
It
regardless?
sounds like we're already under capacity with alum. If we
Yeah.
keep the fluoride in the existing tank.
No, I know, but I'm
Yeah.
saying if you convert the fluoride to alum,
Oh, I see.
when will we need a new tank? Because I'm thinking that if we're truly kind of at this and we need this now, would we not still be close, or does that solve the problem for decades to come?
How old is the existing alum tank?
I'm not sure, I would have to go back and look at records. But, I mean, these tanks are built a specific way, like to block sunlight from getting in, to keep things from freezing, because chemicals freeze at different temperatures. So I did get a cost on like converting versus a brand new. Converting, you're gonna have to heat trace and insulate, it's gonna be about 16,000. A brand new tank would be 19,000. I kinda feel like that would be smarter, because you've got the warranties and everything that go along with getting something that is new, and it's specifically made for that chemical in the first place.
So we're gonna need a new tank regardless?
you're either gonna have to convert the fluoride one and pay about $16,000, or you're gonna have to buy a new one for $19,000
For the alley.
for the alley.
So, but the recommendation, and there's no right or wrong, again, you are professional in regards to what your kind of areas, and I respect that, but the recommendation, though, regardless if we shut off the fluoride or not, would be to probably do a new tank, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
regardless, we need more alum storage.
So what I'm trying to get at is, regardless, we need a new tank. So us taking away the fluoride is kind of almost, and correct me if I'm wrong, moot point in this situation, other than the corrosive nature of the plant.
What would save us?
But we would then need to construct a new containment area along with the new tank, which is gonna be roughly.
$100.
That's what got you, it's the containment area.
Mhm.
Thank you.
What's the continue every 3 years, replacing pumps and systems and concrete degradation?
Right.
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take that fluoride to eat through that concrete? Is that like 30 years? Is that 2 years? I'm just curious. That was
It's
wild.
more than 2. I've been there almost 11 years, and it's looked bad ever since I got there. So
Okay.
there's an actual room for the fluoride bulk tank, because it is dangerous. It's not even in the same area with the other bulk chemicals. So it has its own room, and that concrete is the foundation from that room.
But it's highly concentrated in that
Right.
containment.
Yeah.
It's highly diluted by the time it reaches the consumer of the water.
We only order it once a year, so that tells you how long an order will last.
Well, I feel like, yes, it's a difficult question, but, I also feel we're starting to talk in circles.
Yep.
So, are there any final thoughts, other than, final thoughts, we probably need to end up making a motion, someone would need to make a motion.
You good?
I think we should keep it in the system. I wrestled with this one, but I'm just gonna kind of draw my line here and say that I think we need to keep it in the system. I think from what I've read in the research, independent research I've done, I feel like I see the benefits of it, and I don't see anything that's conclusive, other than the corrosion and the corrosive nature to the plant, of it having any major negative impacts. But I respect those who believe that, because again, this is a tough decision, but quite honestly, it should be at the state level and not a municipality
I
to
agree
decide this.
fully with that, yeah.
I make a motion to follow the recommendation of the Public Works Department to remove fluoride.
All right, motion made by Charlie, is there a second? So there's being no second. What do you, motion failed?
Jim, are you
Done.
able to?
I am, I will not.
And you call for another motion?
I'll call for another motion.
The motion for what?
Motion to keep the fluoride in the drinking water as it is today.
Motion made by Alex. Is there a second to this motion?
What other choice?
I mean,
Second.
all right, second. Motion made by Alex, seconded by Catherine. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. And all those opposed? All right, we'll keep it in 4-1.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys, everyone. Thank you.
All right, that leads us to item C5, I-85 widening project governance.
They have the attachment, maybe I should take a look.
Perfect, well, my apologies, the information that's in your packet, I put it on slides, so, but it is still available in your packet, and the information has largely not changed, so for your consideration tonight, as is presented in your city council packet, NCDOT is requesting, your consideration of a betterments agreement for the I-85 widening project. As a reminder, the scope of this project, as it relates to the betterments specifically, covers from exit 27 here in Belmont all the way to exit 17. But of course, the betterment breakout in cost is concentrated for us in the agreement on just the improvements as it relates to our area specifically. So with that in mind, just to let you know a little bit of the background history, this conversation has been going on for several years with the original idea with the Gaston Cleveland Lincoln NPO that all municipalities would work together in collaboration to identify betterments that would allow for consistency in the aesthetics along the corridor of I-85 with the goal of keeping consistency and unification among the county, as well as for enhancing the beautification of the area as a whole for encouraging attractiveness within the community. So over time, in those collaborative conversations, different betterments came to light. They surveyed all of the municipalities to see which ones would be preferred as a collective whole. And so included in there are higher end betterments for the actual vertical structures, as well as landscaping betterments, lighting for the rail trail that will be provided for by NCDOT as part of the project scope, improvements to the rail bridge for the P&N historic rail line, bridge that goes over 85. And then also, as a reminder, the I-85 widening project for our area also lumps in the improvements and changes to the Main and Wilkinson intersection. So the betterments, therefore, are also reflective of the betterments for that intersection as well. So with all of the intersection and reconfigurations of the road, including Belmont Mount Holly Road at the probably the most complex point, includes upgrades to the mast arms for those at 7 different intersection locations along there. It's a total of 21 mast arms at those 7 locations, and that's because of the lights that are needed in each direction. And so that in its entirety is what makes up the betterments cost as proposed. One thing to keep in mind is this was originally presented to council back in 2023, and at the time the betterment cost for the municipal share was presented as $2.7 million. Since then, some changes have been made to the scope to try to reduce some of that cost. So there was a switch, instead of utilizing full brick, to a brick veneer product that still provides for a nice betterment feature without having as much of the cost implications there. So the total cost share as provided in your packet is $1.9 million to the city of Belmont. That amount would be due at the full completion of the project, which estimated by the MPO staff would be fiscal year 2029 at its best, but could be further out than that. I did also pass out a letter, and as of this afternoon, I did want to share that we received word from, in a formal letter on letterhead, from the monastery as well as Belmont Abbey College. You can see that letter from Bill Monroe on your desk, representing a commitment to the community of $250,000 from each of those entities for a total of a $500,000 commitment, subject to the city's approval of all of the betterments as presented in the agreement. So
I was a little confused by the letter, because I see the monastery reference.
that's correct.
And then when you say the other party, is that the council?
That is Belmont Abbey College. So there's the Southern Benedictine Society, and then Belmont Abbey College is 2 separate but related
All right.
entities.
And who have we not reconfirmed? Because again, that,
The college.
the college, so they have not,
So there were some staff members that were out of town. We had this conversation in 2024, and they all agreed, met with city staff and all agreed to that commitment at that time. And Bill Monroe has reached out and is under every belief that that commitment still stands. But we would be circling up as soon as he makes continued comment to get a letter from them as well.
Well, his comment previously was that they would commit 500,000. That's what this letter
Right.
reflects, 500,000.
Yeah, I see that now, yeah. And these betterments, the ones that we would be jointly funding with the college and the monastery, is that that just exclusively for the bridge itself or all of the betterments with the whole project of that interchange? That takes it.
So the commitment is conditioned on the city including all of the betterments as outlined, which would bring down the total municipal cost share instead of approximately 1.9 million down to $1.4 million.
Any other questions for Tiffany? And obviously, the number is set once the contract is signed, that, there'd be a lot of, I imagine there'd be a lot of inflation or whatever, but once the contract is signed.
That's correct. The
Yes.
cost is, once the agreement is signed, the cost is committed to be a max not to exceed. So if there are any changes in price that would increase that cost, that would be the burden of NCDOT.
So we need a motion to approve the agreement?
Assuming that's the,
Can you just run through all the majority of the betterments? Because I'm reading through it, but.
Sure. So I'll try to do that again. If I missed one that you guys have some specific questions about, please let me know. I apologize, there were some slides, but technical difficulties, so we'll do our best. So the first one is the actual interchange improvement. So the vertical walls as you're coming on and off of the interstate, those are going to be at exit 26 only. The bridge in place right now for exit 27 is going to remain in place. So the bridge at exit 27 is going to get pressure washed, it's going to get maybe some landscaping at 27, but primarily the bulk of 27 is going to remain as it is. Okay, so the betterments for the interchange itself are very heavily focused on exit 26, where they're doing a complete reconfiguration of that interchange. So that cost largely reflects the brick veneer, as well as some of the other half walls that are needed to construct those pieces of infrastructure going in, as well as I believe there are some stamps so that people will know what bridge is above them when they're going on the interstate. So for instance, if you're on the interstate and you're crossing under Belmont Holly Road, just as a reference point, it would have, not big, but in the corner, a stamped note of which roadway bridge you're going under, just as a placemaker. That is not the significant portion of the cost, but it is one of the things included in that line item.
It's similar to, I don't know if you, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's similar to the toll road that they have when you're going down. Yeah, where they did like the stamp and the logos and stuff like that. Is that
Right.
a fair?
There's another one, I believe, up near University City, where they have a logo and a seal as well.
Yeah,
That would be something that would be provided by us, so it would be the one that we would want. But that's the aesthetic look, really, is some of the betterments that are happening in other NCDOT projects. And the thought is that these types of interstate widening projects do not happen frequently at all. So if we want it to look in a certain way for the next 100 years, now is the time to get those improvements. Because even if they make minor modifications, the amount of widening that's happening on 85 right now is practically not going to be funded again for another widening for a significant period of time.
I thought I heard you say that the bridge at 27 is not going to be replaced.
That's
I think
correct.
the drawings that we saw from the links from DOT showed that bridge is eventually going to be replaced, is it not?
It is not as part of this project. It was originally included to be replaced, and it was cut out of the project scope as one of the items.
Maybe that's an old drawing because it was red with the black stripes through.
So that was letting you know that that's actually going to remain in place.
Okay.
It was a very confusing
Yeah.
legend and key, absolutely.
But 26 bridge is going to be a little further south to line up with the new interchange with Holly Road exit.
Yes, and that whole thing is getting reconfigured to include 2 roundabouts when you get off of 26 going north as an entrance into Belmont Abbey College. And it pushes the roadway out a little bit. So we've been working with some of the property owners. Keith Hawthorne Ford is one that you might notice is more notably impacted by some of the realignment of the roadways, to understand how that might affect that business. But NCDOT is also working quite closely with all of those businesses to understand how that reconfiguration could include driveway cuts at alternate locations in order to provide access to them. So it does include that. Not included in the betterments, but included as part of the overall project scope. NCDOT is required to include any multimodal that's included on our long-range plans in the scope. So the one big benefit to this is I know we've talked about the rail trail in previous conversations. Anything that's within the I-85 widening project scope will automatically require DOT to build out the northern segment of the rail trail for us. That cost is not included as a betterment. What's reflected in your agreement for betterments are specifically some lighting, not along the entirety of the trail, but specifically near the college campus where we might see more pedestrian activity to make sure that visibility for nighttime use is there for safety reasons at the request of the college. And then there is also some safety rail that was noted as required, but you will see an enhanced feature as part of this agreement to make sure that it meets the level of aesthetics that we would like to see running alongside the entirety of that trail for Belmont. So instead of it just being a chain link fence, it would be a black anodized metal type of fencing material. And that is to try to make sure that as we have to continue that fence potentially into downtown, that betterment can be of a standard that we would like reflected in our community.
How far south are the lights gonna go?
So the reconfiguration of the lights, when it comes to Wilkinson, that will be the last light. That intersection will be the last light to the most south.
Say that one time. So
Main and Wilkinson, the intersection, and then so it's between that point as the most southern, all the way up to the lights along Belmont Mount Holly Road that would be required for the reconfiguration.
And part of the betterment is black protective coated metal pole and mast arm for the signals, for the interceptions.
Right.
That's what I'm trying
I feel like we're being fleeced.
Well,
Say that again?
When you say mast arm, so at every turn lane, there's gonna be actually a mast arm there? Or-
So at every intersection
Yeah,
that is included, there are 7 of them.
right.
Part of that is because the unique design of the Belmont Mount Holly Road where it swirls and then there's another road and it kind of curves and curves back on each other. There are going to be more intersections that are going to require mast arms because of that to direct traffic. And so that is an upgrade from a more traditional wooden pole that would require potentially increased maintenance.
It's been a little while since we talked about this, but didn't other municipalities also sign up for improvements to the exits and bridges in their areas?
That is correct, and there are a number of Gaston County municipalities that had originally actually agreed to these betterments prior to this updated agreement. They will need to likely update and amend their agreements, and that's because instead of keeping the project as one scope for the entirety of the corridor, they have now broken out this project into 3 different segments. The Belmont segment is the one that's going to be let for bidding first. So they are currently anticipating, of course always subject to change, that construction would begin fiscal year 2026 on the Belmont segment. And then that's why the projection is that it would not wrap up any sooner than fiscal year 2029.
Who are these other municipalities?
It's everyone, every municipality that goes between us and exit 17 in, so it's Gastonia, Lowell, I believe,
Yeah.
Cramerton at 22, that might
Yeah.
be.
that's-
Yeah. So every exit between set
They're gonna
27.
upfit every bridge.
They're going to have to
Replace
because
bridges.
in
Yeah, I
order,
think they're gonna upfit them with the brick and all
Oh.
that.
so if there's an interchange,
They're doing like that type of betterment. And honestly, I mean, Charlie wasn't on council when we talked about this. When was the first time we talked about this? This was what?
This goes back like 5 years at least.
it goes back a while.
Probably before me then, but Jim, you remember when we had these conversations?
Yes.
That
That
happened?
time is a retreat.
Yeah.
And all the municipalities have been working with NCDOT for like I said, like 5 years at least about the design of what that facade may look like, so they're all consistent as you go through Gaston County.
Well, that was my question is there gonna be a bridge that doesn't have it, and then a bridge that does have it, and a bridge that doesn't?
And
That
that's
was the
sort of
pressure.
why-
That was the pressure
Yeah.
behind why we did it at the time, because everyone else signed up for it. There was a push by, I think, the EDC for a beautification for the entryway into Gaston County off of 85. Is how I believe they spun it at least 3 years ago.
Yes,
when
and
I
my
talked
understanding is
about
those commitments, Gaston County is committing to increased monumental signage as you're coming. I think they are still planning on placing that at exit 27. So the bridge itself is not getting replaced, but it doesn't mean there's not going to be betterments for aesthetics. Just that we're not being asked to cover those costs because the commitment's being made by the county in that case. And I believe travel and tourism made a separate commitment as well for enhanced landscaping.
And see, that's why I sort of like, you know, if they're paying for 27, then I feel like,
Well, that's what you said, 27 was just gonna be pressure washed and
On
landscaped.
the bridge itself, so there still would be landscaping at that, but not coming to a cost for the city of Belmont because another entity would be covering that expense, as well as any welcome to Gaston County signage that would be covered by the county.
Okay.
So those commitments used to be part of what was being proposed for Belmont as a municipal share, and we were able to partner successfully with others in our community to cover those costs.
The thought was is that one of the big organizations that would benefit from this is the Abbey. So we had asked at that time that this is the gateway or entryway into the college.
Right.
And then that's why they came to the table and proposed the 250 plus this other
Yes.
organization to accumulate to $500,000.
Yes, and so one of the other betterments that is included aesthetically is those roundabouts. You'll notice those are landscaped roundabout islands. So there's also a conversation with the Abbey about potential partnership for them to maintain that landscaping because it is their entranceway into there. But making these aesthetic betterments now will allow irrigation to be able to be included in the project so that it doesn't need to be added later in order to make sure that that continues to look good in perpetuity if we are landscaping those islands.
What do we get a landscape with that would need irrigation?
So grass and or shrub plantings, and those would be included as part of the betterment costs.
any further questions for Tiffany?
The landscaping betterments elsewhere, do they have irrigation? Like, pick a bridge that's got landscaping around it, anywhere in Gaston County, does it have irrigation?
I do not know a definitive answer to that. I would need to get back to you on that.
I just feel like that's a waste of money.
Yeah, I mean, any other thoughts, questions? Does anyone want to make a motion?
So are we, I noticed in the summary, are we reserving for this future payment now, I guess? Because I noticed that there was a payment plan option, are we planning on doing this as more lump sum or?
My recommendation would be that we place it on the CIP and pay for it in fiscal year 29 and just planning for that payment, or 2029 or 2035 when they get finished with the project.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but it's a fixed cost. I mean,
It's you can pay it all up front, you can pay it in installment
Right,
finance.
but if it takes them 5 years to complete it, or 10 years, our cost remains the same.
That's correct.
When Belmont Abbey was here, we had a conversation about the black powder coated lights, right? And that was a significant cost.
Over the bridge?
Yeah. And we determined that we didn't want to do that because it was such a significant cost. Are we changing our minds on that now?
I apologize, I'm not recollecting the conversation on where those black lights are located.
But that's specific detail.
The pedestrian lighting of the multi-use path on the Indian Spur Bridge, exterior wall lighting, and the parapet. There's 33 of them. The cost to municipality is $55,835.
And so those are going on the half walls now to be able to shine at the ground as opposed to going and having light pollution for everyone. It's just at the pedestrian pathway.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement as
Second.
is.
All right, motion made by Jason, seconded by Alex. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, does that bring us to other business? Let's start with Jason.
Just had a couple of quick notes on this. First off, wanted to thank all the volunteers and staff who came out to support us with the spring cleanup with KBB this past Saturday. It was a huge success. I think we had over 65 volunteers. We got a lot picked up around town. Also, just wanted to point out real quickly, I know we've gotten a lot of recent messages in from citizens, really messages of appreciation for our staff. in various departments and the job that you all are doing. If you're here in the room, we really appreciate all that you guys do. We've got an exceptional staff. And it's nice to see our citizens having such positive experiences with them. So a little kindness goes a long way, and I'd like to thank our staff for the excellent job that you guys all do. That's it.
Thank you, Catherine.
I just wanted to thank police and fire for the walk to school event. You guys did a great job with those kids. They absolutely loved it. Emmy has not quit talking about it, actually. So that was super fun. So thank you for that. Jim, I wanted to thank you for speaking at that off the fly. You did a great job, and what you said was super meaningful, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Charlie,
Nothing for me.
Alex.
Just a few things. Last council meeting, we talked about trash pickup and changing the schedule. In regards to advertising these new schedules, I might be just missing them, but I haven't really seen anything being advertised quite yet. My concern, as mentioned at the last meeting, is we need to make sure that people are well aware of these new schedules, or it could be problematic. So just curious on an update on that one.
Yeah, we've got a full calendar laid out. I thought the first one went out, I would say.
Yeah, we got one now. We can have it.
Yeah,
Did
we
you
could
get
go-
one?
I did, I got one a week.
Are we doing social media blasts and
This is a
the
hard
Connect
copy.
as well?
Yeah, we did, we're doing all of it, social media, it's kind of, Cassie laid it out, and there was, social media blast, we had a flyer, insert in the water bill that's coming up, you know, there's like multiple things that'll take place, but I could share the actual calendar with you all that we approved.
Yeah, that would be great, 'cause, I mean, again, it might be out there, I just haven't seen it.
One of our neighborhoods got left off.
They probably
I
did.
don't
recall receiving it.
That's probably where most of the complaints come from, over there. Just a quick note, good job, and thanks everyone who came out for Keep Belmont Beautiful. I think, you know, everyone did a good job. Jason, appreciate the donuts and coffee. Jim, I'm pretty sure, I think I picked more trash up than you, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I picked up some, I don't know, my bag is pretty full.
Me and Jim were parked on the,
Yes.
in front of McDonald's, but it was a good time. I appreciate everybody coming out. The last thing I do have, and Tiffany, this one might be for you. I was talking to Mark Stafford with the MPO. I would really like for us to try to firm up ownership of the South Fork Parkway. When I talked to Mark, he did seem to be open that NCDOT will be taking that over, but it's more potential verbal than it is written. If we don't have NCDOT take this road over, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars of repaving costs in the future. So
I thought that was a speed limit issue now, on Belmont 1, wasn't it?
Shelley had a conversation because we pushed back. When council voted on that, I had asked Shelley, as long as NCDOT takes this over, and she said she had a verbal, and then we voted to change or adjust the speed limit. But that has not been in writing as of yet, to my knowledge, so I think that's something we need to circle back on and get done. I talked to Mark, he said they'd be open to it, but waiting for communication for the staff. So if we can send that over and get that in writing, the NCDOT takes over the South Fork Parkway, I think that would be big. And then outside of that, that's all I have here.
Okay, thank
Jim, I'm
you.
sorry, I had one more thing. I apologize.
Just one more
thing.
This is kind of an unusual request from a citizen, but I think it's important. Miles, I don't know if you were copied on this, but I think it may have come to all of us this past week. We had a citizen down in your neck of the woods in the McLean Peninsula area that asked if we could check into an issue raised by some residents about a bald eagle's nest. That is located at behind 1120 Sanderling Place near Drift. And the residents are concerned that the new construction of McLean may be violating the federal regulations that apparently require a house to be at least 660 feet away from the nest. I don't know if that's.
Oh, I see Tiffany raising her hand, please, come up.
That was quick.
Yes.
Sure, I'm able to provide you guys an update that the builder who identified that there was a bald eagle's nest on the subject site. One, the bald eagle's nest is conveniently within a tree save area on the property, so it was protected and will remain protected. In addition, the builder has secured an Eagle permit, which we now have a copy of, that's correct, an Eagle permit. And it outlines the specific construction activities that are allowable within 330 foot of the site, as well as 660 feet. Planning staff is taking that information that was provided specifically to the developer of that property and sharing that information with the surrounding property owners as well, and also including South Carolina in on that communication, as there are some parcels in the McLean development within that radius that do cross the state line. So those are property owners that have not yet gotten communications. There's a mailed notice that will be going out, but there was an email sent out to the overall McLean developer as well as South Carolina planning staff already prior to the weekend.
Was that Hinshaw that did all that, or?
The individual developer that had purchased those lots, I believe it was Keystone Builders in this case, is the one who secured the Eagle permit because they have a several. It's not a waiver.
In Belmont District.
We gotta add that to the fee schedule.
It's not a waiver at all. There are some lots within that area that will not be allowed to have any construction until mating season is completed, and so those lots are specifically outlined in there with holds that would need to be placed on those lots for construction activities to continue or to be ceased until mating season's over.
So it's not indefinite.
It's not definite. It's just to allow for potential future bald eagles.
Of course, unless they come back.
That's awesome, Tiffany.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, well, yes, thank you for that. All right. So order, I know everyone's excited about the Eagle permits, but we only have a little ways to go. Let's keep it in check. Is there anything, so Alex, you were finished, Jason had one more thing, you're done. That's mine. So the only thing, well, I echo everyone that's talked about the great events that have been going on around the city and their appreciation for staff and volunteers and everyone who's helped put them together. I had one suggestion from a resident who said it might be convenient to treat bulk pickup more like yard waste, in terms of if you have bulk pickup, you can place a call and have it picked up. For lack of a better term, as opposed to like I guess we have designated weeks, and thought that might be more convenient, but since I think bulk pickup is done by Waste Pro and not the city, I'm not sure how feasible it is, but I said I'd bring that to the attention of the city manager and public works director, but so I just wanted to raise that issue. Alex pointed out, I had some questions about the impending route changes for waste pickup and recycling. Just to remind everyone of that. Hopefully there will be some reminders coming out soon. Everyone get ready.
Takes effect May 1st.
May 5th, I think. May 5th. Budget season's coming up. The April workshop is going to be fairly heavy hitting because we've got budget discussion. We will also have the results of the long anticipated sewer capacity study for the remainder of Belmont. So that should be interesting and a lot to digest. So come prepared. And then, if anyone happens to have a couch I can sleep on tonight, I'd probably be interested in that. That's all I have. If there's, oh yes.
The Waste Pro change notification schedule for March, on March the 26th, we had social media and City Connect messages. On Monday the 31st, we had physical water bill notice. April the 1st, water smart notice. Monday, April 14th, Waste Pro postcard to be mailed. The 16th, social media and City Connect messages. The 30th, social media and City Connect messages in the second water bill notice. And then Sunday, May the 4th, social media and City Connect messages. And City Connect messages are however you sign up, text, email, phone, bald eagle. And then, of course, May 5th is the route change begins.
Sounds like you've got it covered, thank you.
No, it does sound like you have it covered, but I must be unplugged, because I haven't seen.
You guys are all over the world down there.
I guess so. When did the first social media post go up?
March 26th, I think, is it?
On this calendar, March the 26th, social media and City Connect message.
Did it have the schedule, or was it just like, hey, we're about to change the route?
I don't know, but I can share it with you.
I'm asking because I was just gonna go back and share that.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
And if there's nothing further, we do have
Closed session.
a motion to go into closed session, which I will entertain. Motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 31811A3, to consult with the city attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege with respect to the case of Department of Transportation versus City of Belmont and Truist Bank and other matters.
So moved. Give it to Jason.
Motion by Jason, second by Alex. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed?